What's up, guys? You are watching Fight Feed, and today I'm going to be going through all of my picks and predictions for the upcoming Dana White's Contender Series card that is happening on August 19th, this upcoming Tuesday. I will go through each matchup on this card, breaking down all of the details that you guys would need, especially from a betting perspective for those of you that might be looking to throw some money in on these. Obviously, if you haven't or don't know, Dana White's Contender Series has historically been very, very big for underdogs somehow coming in clutch and getting wins. So hopefully I'll be able to give you a couple of those for this week. I will not be diving into like specific odds and things of that nature. I'm happy to break those down as part of this series if you are interested. So make sure you guys comment below if you would like me to start doing that. But before we dive in, a quick message from our sponsor. If you aren't subscribed to Fight Feed, f*** you! All right, guys, so starting off with the first fight on the card, we've got a middleweight bout between Brandon Holmes and Cam Rowston. Brandon Holmes, 28 years old, 6'2". His reach, unfortunately, was not on any of the sites that I was looking at, so I don't have that detail here, but he is obviously fighting at middleweight, 5-0 record, has not fought in the UFC. Cam Rowston, on the other hand, 30 years old, 6'2". His reach also not available, which makes no sense because he literally was in Contender Series last year. He's 11-3 with an 0-1 record in the UFC because, as I've mentioned before, if they have an 0-1 record in the UFC during my Dana White's Contender Series breakdowns, that means that they've fought on Contender Series previously, which Cam Rowston did last August. So taking a look at both these guys' strengths and weaknesses, obviously on the side of Brandon Holmes, 3 of his 5 wins come by KO, so he is a bit of a favorite to go out there and maybe get the job done with the hands. 2 of his wins are by decision. Now, weaknesses for him that I called out is just overall his strength of schedule, and we'll break that down a little bit more in the next slide, but the guys he's fought and gotten wins over simply just don't have a lot of experience, and that is just a weakness in my opinion. Rowston, on the other hand, 64% of his wins by submission, so 7 out of 11 of his wins are by sub, 27% of his wins by KO, which is 3 out of the 11. And that means he's gotten 1 win by decision. That shows you guys this guy is definitely a finisher. I think both of these guys, from a statistical standpoint, finish their fights. Now, weaknesses for Rowston, he just doesn't seem to do very well against a guy that has very strong offensive grappling, like wrestling and getting them to the floor and control. And the reason being is, if you guys need any type of information on that, it's his loss to Torres Finney. He just simply got manhandled by Torres Finney, unfortunately. Was not able to get anything done there. Torres Finney actually didn't even get the contract, I don't think, in his fight against Rowston because of the lackluster performance. But Rowston still lost that fight. All right, a momentum check for these guys. So Holmes is obviously undefeated, so he's got a 5-fight win streak. He last fought on May 25th, 2025. And I'm not going to read off all of the names here because these guys are still pretty unknown, if you will. But his last 4 fights, his most recent opponent had a 6-5 record. His opponent before that was 2-0. His opponent before that was 0-0. And his opponent before that was 1-0. So that is a big reason that I call out Holmes' strength of schedule as a weakness. You have a couple guys on here who don't even have 3 fights under their record that he's getting wins over. But obviously he was still a green fighter at those times as well. So it's not necessarily his fault, but it is something to call out because when you look at the fights that Rowston's had, obviously he's on a 3-fight win streak. He last fought on February 8th, 2025. He has a win over a guy with 4-3 record, a win over a guy with a 3-1 record, guy with 1-3 record, and then before that, a loss to Finney, who's 8-0. So even if you're just comparing those details right there, Rowston still also has several other fights that are not showing here, whereas the last 4 fights for Holmes basically makes up his entire record, given that he only has 5 fights. Rowston has fought several other fighters that have a, either losing or decent record, but that to me just says that at least he's fought guys who have a string of professional fights under their belt versus fighting guys that might be debuting in their pro career or fighting guys that have only a couple fights in their pro career. The intangibles and X factors, not much to write home about here. Obviously, neither of these guys are home fighters. There's a shit ton of pressure for both. red flag once again that I'm calling out for Brandon Holmes, just limited resume experience thus far. And then also, I didn't write this down, but one thing I'll call out about Rowston, he trains out of City Kickboxing. So he is going to be getting looks from very talented fighters in the City Kickboxing gym. That is going to play and pay a lot of dividends, I think, in his favor. And guys, I'm going Cam Rowston. I was shocked to see that. I think on Tapology, he was actually, like, after I had already made my picks, I usually don't like to look at who's picking who on Tapology until after I've done picks. And so when I checked it, it actually shows that Rowston is like only 25% or even less people are picking him, whereas 75% of people are favoring Holmes. Guys, based off of just experience alone and the fact that Rowston's already done the walk and done the fight in Dana White's Contender Series, I feel like he has kind of all the chips in his favor here. He's got the breadth of experience against opponents who have several professional fights compared to, obviously Holmes. Like, one of those wins on his record is a guy who never even had a fight yet. So I am just solely going off of that and that XP. And I also know that Rowston has some chops with the submission game and striking. And so I think that is all going to play in his favor. I see Rowston getting a submission, 3 out of 5 confidence. All right, guys, the next fight on the card, we've got Louis Lee Scott versus Kaushik Saikumar. So Scott is 25 years old, 5'8", 70-inch reach, 135 pounds because it's a bantamweight bout. He is 9-0 in his professional career. Kaushik, on the other hand, is 27, 5'10". No reach listed for him. 5-0 record. Obviously, neither guy has any record in the UFC. Styles for this fight. So Louis Lee Scott, the things that I've called out for him, 56% of his wins by KO, 22% of his wins by submission. Not too many weaknesses to write home about. I think Louis Lee Scott does have a nice style on the feet, especially. He has a great ability to mix it up. And also, I love his dynamic stance switching that he does. Now, on the side of Saikumar, he's finished 4 out of his 5 pro fights. 3 of those were from strikes, and 1 of those was from submissions. He's a pretty calculated striker, too. I did watch some of his tape. It's nice to see that he continuously, throughout a fight, even when he's gone into like the later rounds of a fight, he's always got the very high guard. He's always really calculated in seeing what his opponent's throwing at him and seeing where he can counter. I also like to see the speed of his left hook. To give you guys some details on Louis Lee Scott, he is a marauder on the feet, I think. In the couple fights I saw of his, he pieced up a guy pretty quickly in the PFL, landed a few very good counter shots, and then he landed, I think because of the stance switching, was able to get that outside lead foot position and land a solid lead hook on his opponent, dropping him, and then he threw a head kick after his opponent got back up, dropped him for good. So Louis Lee Scott seems to be able to mix it up quite a bit on the feet, whether it be with the punches and the kicks. But then also, he seems to be a bit savvy on the ground as well. He does have a couple wins by submission. Before I jump into the next slide here, one thing I'd call out for Kaushik, just a bit of a weakness for him is just his strength of schedule. Only 5 fights compared to 9 on the side of Louis Lee Scott. So Scott's almost got double the amount of fights that Kaushik does. Momentum check. So Louis Lee Scott's 9-0, so 9-fight win streak. And then Kaushik is 5-0 with a 5-fight win streak. Louis Lee Scott last fought on Valentine's Day 2025, whereas Kaushik last fought on 10/18/2024. So a bit of a longer layoff on the side of Kaushik. And looking at their last 4 fights, Louis Lee Scott's opponents, 5-0 for his last opponent, 14-1 for his opponent before that, 9-4 for the opponent before that, and then 5-3 for the opponent before that. So not only does he have more wins, but it seems that the opponents he's fought just seem to have a lot better experience as well. On the side of Kaushik, though, his last 4 opponents, the most previous one, 4-1, then 2-1, then 5-1, and then 4-7. So, his opponents did also have a bit of experience, but, that second opponent there, the guy that's got Winters as the last name, is 2-1, so not a ton of experience there. And then you have his first win out of these last 4, 4-7 opponents, so definitely has professional experience, but not very good. Intangibles and X factors. So Louis Lee Scott, not the home fighter, has got a ton of pressure, just like Kaushik does. and also not the home fighter on Kaushik's side as well. The only variable that I had to call out for Kaushik, his head coach is Ryan Hall, so he trains at Ryan Hall's gym. And I think that is a bit of like an outlying variable. And you know what's funny, guys? I found out that he trains with Ryan Hall based off of, I had seen that he is fighting in Virginia. Okay. I didn't know where Ryan Hall lives specifically. I thought he was in like the Washington, D.C. area. But after, watching Kaushik's last fight where he got a KO in the third round, throughout that fight, multiple times, he jumped that Imanari roll that Ryan Hall always does. And I was like, I bet this fucker trains with Ryan Hall. Sure enough, this is like, I guess, giving myself some kudos. This is when you know you're a bit of a fucking nerd. I was just able to see how he was doing that roll. And I'm like, that is like some Ryan Hall shit. And I was able to actually confirm then that he does train with Ryan Hall. So that is a bit of an outlying factor here because, as most of you may know, Ryan Hall is a very well-touted grappler, especially in jiu-jitsu. I think that could create some issues for Louis Lee Scott, knowing that Kaushik has that experience on the ground. But overall, guys, I am going with Scott to get the win. I do feel like, though, because of watching Kaushik's performances, he is a dog, right? So in his last fight, he went all the way to round 3 where it was a fight that I feel like his opponent was able to get ahead on in just getting some takedowns and things like that. But Kaushik stayed composed throughout and was able to, get his opponent in the clinch in round 3, threw a knee up the middle, dropped him, and then had some very brutal ground and pound, like very long straight shot ground and pound that just he connected a couple of solid shots that I think put his opponent out. The opponent complained about it being a short stoppage, but I definitely think he was out. And I'm putting this out there, guys, because if you're feeling risky, this is maybe one where you could kind of hedge your bets, I guess. If you're feeling like Kaushik, if you feel like because he has that dog energy, he did very well in his previous fights and he's just shown a way to get wins, you can definitely take that info and run with it. But I'm thinking that Scott, just based off strength of schedule and overall skill set, will be able to get the job done. Not thinking he'll be able to finish this, but it could happen that way. I'm thinking probably a decision, 3 out of 5 confidence. The next fight on the card, we've got Josh Hokit versus Guilherme Uriel. So taking a look at Josh Hokit's 27 years old. He looks 37 somehow. 6'1", 74-inch reach, 265 pounds. Although Josh Hokit does not usually come in at that weight. His last fight, I think, came in at 238. So he seems to be a bit of a lighter, scrappier heavyweight than a Tai Tuivasa type, if you will. Josh Hokit's 5-0. He also brings a ton of experience because he was a very well-touted wrestler at Fresno State University, and then also he did also play NCAA collegiate football at Fresno State. So he's a 2-sport athlete there. Did very well in college football. Actually was able to land himself on the training squad a few times for the San Francisco 49ers and then also for the Arizona Cardinals before he made his way into MMA. So those are some great things for Josh Hokit, and I think it ties into the overall image of what he's able to bring to the cage in terms of athleticism. Now, Guilherme Uriel, on the other hand, is 28 years old, 6'1", nothing on line for his reach, 265, and then 6-1 record overall as a pro. Jumping into the styles for this fight, Josh Hokit has a 100% finish rate, 3 wins by submission, 2 wins by TKO or KO. And based on just his overall stats, he seems to have a very well-rounded skill set. But I would say some things that I want to give you guys in terms of actionable things that Josh Hokit brings to the cage is he is a very fast heavyweight, in my opinion. His ability to close the distance and shoot takedowns usually happens so fast that his opponent is unable to really even defend. But even when his opponents do defend, he just has a good way of like almost like freestyle wrestling and getting from one leg to the back and like just doing things that a high level wrestler would be able to do compared to someone who's got lower level wrestling. Josh Hokit's not only like the high level wrestler attitude, but he's also got that speed, I think, that a lot of other heavyweights might be lacking. Weaknesses for Josh Hokit is just very limited experience thus far. His strength of schedule is not the greatest. On the side of Guilherme Uriel, though, he also has a 100% finish rate. Also pretty similar to Josh Hokit in that he has 3 wins by KO, 3 wins by submission. So pretty well-rounded as well, 50-50 in terms of if he gets a KO or a sub. I'll also say Uriel is a very fast-paced and agile style as well. I watched a couple of his fights, even the one where he got knocked out. He was actually winning that fight, in my opinion, very fast, and his transitions on the ground were like water. Like, he literally doesn't even, when he was in full guard and then going into side control or going for mount on his previous opponent that knocked him out, he literally, like, there was no in between. Like, he would be in guard and suddenly flow to side control in a way where you're like, damn, he moves pretty quickly. He also has a great ability to, like, pounce his opponent into, like, he jumped onto the opponent straight into side control, did a very good job at just getting himself into the right positions there. The weakness I have for Guilherme is, like, obviously he can be open on the feet. He was able to be KO'd, and I also think that could be tied to gas tank as well. I think that he has a tendency to start too fast and blow the wad, and then suddenly he is open for counters and gets caught. Momentum check for these guys. Josh Hokit's 5-fight win streak because he's 5-0. He last fought on 5-9-25. Looking at his previous opponents, his most recent 6-4, the one before that 5-3, then 2-1, then 2-2. He did get the win, a couple wins in Bellator, actually, believe it or not. But yeah, just showed great tenacity and ability to kind of flow around the opponents, get him to the ground, and do his thing. Uriel's 2-fight win streak, he last fought on February 7th, 2025. His last 4 opponents, a 6-1 guy, 2-0, 4-0, 2-1. Obviously, he was knocked out by Camacho. Camacho actually, who did KO Uriel, he fought on Contender Series last summer and got KO'd. So take that for what you will. Taking a look at the intangibles and X factors for this fight, not a ton of neither of these guys are home fighters. They're both going to be under the pressure to get that contract, of course. And then taking a look at other variables, the one thing I call out for Josh Hokit is that he trains at Jackson Wink. He also, like, as I said before, very decorated wrestler in the collegiate realm, and then also was a football player as well. So he's going to bring some of those explosive athleticism traits to the cage that other guys just wouldn't have that experience because of his background in wrestling and football. I am going Hokit in this fight, guys, but I want to call this out because, once again, although I'm thinking Hokit gets the win, we really haven't seen Hokit up against guys who can kind of play that game with him in terms of being agile and having some type of speed at heavyweight. I do think Guilherme is going to have that speed where he could potentially be a very difficult test for Hokit, or Hokit really could be just levels above and we see him just like buzzsaw through Guilherme. But I think Guilherme, from what I've seen, he does have that agile speed, and he also has that power in his hands where he might be able to give Hokit some difficulties and maybe even get the win. So if you guys are feeling, risky, you could even think about that for a bet as well. But outside of that, I just think that Hokit, based on his style, based on the ability he's had in the cage, he hasn't been KO'd. And really, I don't think any opponents gotten close there. He just seems to be very, very good. I think that if he does get a win, it's likely to be by submission. 3 out of 5 confidence. The next fight on the card, we've got Tommy Cuozzi versus Ramiro Jimenez. So Tommy's 25 years old, 5'7", no reach listed online, not sure why. 145 pounds because this is a featherweight bout. 8-0 record, 0-0 in the UFC. Jimenez, on the other hand, 26 years old, 5'8", 145. 10-0 record, 0-0 in the UFC. Taking a look at the styles for this fight. So, Cuozzi's got a 100% finish rate, 6 wins by KO and 2 wins by submission. Seems to have like a very solid all-around game, in my opinion. Some weaknesses, though, for him. Obviously, strength of schedule is also another thing to call out here. And then also, he's never been to a third round in his career yet. That is going to, that could play a few ways, right? Like, we could look at that and say, well, maybe it's the Tom Aspinall effect. Maybe it's not Tommy's fault that he's just getting his opponents out of there, which I would agree with. But because he hasn't been to the third round, we simply don't know if can he last that full fight if he doesn't get the finish in the earlier rounds, especially considering that most guys, when they come from these regional scenes and they go into Dana White's Contender Series, you'll see every year, you'll see several guys that are undefeated and these world beaters that end up losing their O in Contender Series. And sometimes losing that O dominantly. So where I'm headed with this is we haven't seen him kind of go the distance. We don't know what that experience level is like. So it's like, does he last all 3 rounds? Does he blow his gas tank? That's something that we'll just have to find out. On the side of Jimenez, his strengths are 50% of his wins by KO, 30% of his wins are by submission, and then the rest are by decision. So that's 5 wins by KO and 3 wins by subs. And then looking at his weaknesses, looking at Jimenez and his weaknesses, he can be a bit of a slow starter. He usually, like when I've watched some of the clips, it looks like he takes sometimes like half a round or even a full round just to get like the hang of things, get the swing of things. And that is going to be a tough attribute to bring to a fight against Tommy Cuozzi, who Tommy Cuozzi seems to be a very like pedal to the metal type fighter, looking to get finishes and also coming out guns a-blazing in round 1. Now, one other call out is Jimenez has several wins on his record, but they do come from him winning the 2023 Copa Combat tournament. Now, that tournament, from what I could see in his record, it looks like he fought like several guys on December 15, 2023, and then he fought a guy or two on the next day. So just take that for what you will. It looks like, a couple of his recent wins come from that tournament style format, which is a testament to his grit and durability, given that he was able to win those bouts. But I also call it out because you don't know if his opponents in these fights perhaps weren't injured already, right, from the previous fight, and that he's just somehow, getting the win that way. But it does speak to his own durability. Momentum check, Tommy Cuozzi's 8-fight win streak, because he's 8-0. Last fought 3-15-25. He got a win over a guy who was 8-4. Before that, a win over a guy 2-4. Before that, 5-1, and before that, 1-8. So at least, although some of these guys have horrible records, at least they have several fights under their belt where Cuozzi could be tested against guys with that type of experience. Now, on the side of Jimenez, a 10-fight win streak. He last fought on 12-16-2023. Okay, keep that in mind. Garcia was his last fight, 9-2. Before that, 11-7. Before that, 5-2. Before that, 7-2. So Jimenez's opponents all have a decent wealth of experience and also not the worst records either, which is definitely something to write home about. However, want to call out, I believe all 4 of these wins, or at least the last 3, were from that tournament style format where, like I said, you don't know if perhaps the opponents he was getting these wins over were already compromised that gave him the edge. Obviously, he was able to survive and get the wins. You give that credit there, but just keep that in mind. It's not as easy, in my opinion, to go out there and fight a guy who's coming off of a fresh training camp and is going in there at 100% compared to going in there against a guy who might be compromised already. Intangibles and X factors, neither one of these guys is the home fighter. Tons of pressure, of course. Tommy Cuozzi, what I have as red flags is that his previous opponent's best record was 5-1. The rest of them all have a losing record or they're 50-50. Now, Jimenez, a huge red flag for me, guys, is the fact that he hasn't fought since December 2023. That is, we're almost 2 years away from him being out for 2 years with no professional fights. That is a huge red flag for me, guys. And to see similar to the previous fights, after seeing how people picked in this, I ended up going Cuozzi for my pick. And that's mainly because I'm like, look, this is Dana White's Contender Series. Cuozzi's likely a big underdog if everyone's picking the opposite way. But I feel like people aren't considering the fact that Jimenez has been out for almost 2 years. And even if he's a very skilled fighter, you have to remember that ring rust does exist for a lot of these guys. But it's not even just the ring rust, but it's also just getting the hang of the timing of their opponent, getting the hang of like being in a fight again, right? That's all going to be happening on that night. Plus you mount that pressure that's going to be coming from being on Dana White's Contender Series. Now, I could be dead wrong. Jimenez can go out there and maybe be a marauder who just blows through Cuozzi. But I think the fact that Cuozzi's not only had more momentum recently, he's also going to have that confidence going into this because he just fought not too long ago. He's going to be sharper in those realms of defensiveness and also being on the gas pedal for the attack. Whereas I think if you consider the fact that Jimenez has obviously had slow starts in the past, you almost 100% can bet he might have a slow start in this fight too, because not only does he have slow starts in his career just overall, but he's also coming in not fresh. He's coming in from a huge layoff. So he's going to need to get the timing right. He's going to kind of have to get back in the swing of things. And this is a 15-minute fight where he's not going to have that luxury of being able to just get back into the swing of things. So I could see Cuozzi getting it done, guys, just being the more active fighter, maybe getting a decision. Not really sure if I see these guys finishing one another. It's kind of hard to tell. But I would say decision, 3 out of 5. Confidence. And the final fight of the evening for this card, guys, we've got Manuel Exposito versus Jose Delano. Manuel's 25 years old, 5'7", 69-inch reach, 145 pounds because this is a featherweight bout, 13-2 record. Delano, on the other hand, 28 years old, 5'8", 70.5-inch reach, 15-3 professional record. Taking a look at the styles. So Exposito, 34% of his wins by submission, 23% of his wins by KO, and 23% of his wins by decision. So he seems to be a ground game oriented fighter, has that grappling attack that he can utilize, very fast-paced offense as well. Some weaknesses for him is that obviously, given the fact that he has a low percentage of KOs, you would question if he has the power behind his punches to actually finish fights by KO. Obviously, he's not finishing that many based on his 23% wins by KO. But also, I'd call it a weakness that he has been KO'd in one of his losses. So that is something to keep in mind going up against a guy in Delano. Now, Delano, on the other hand, is 40% of his wins. 40% of his wins are by decision, 33% of his wins by submission, and then 27% of his wins are by KO. Is it 27? I think it's 27. Weaknesses for Delano is that he has also lost by previously, and he has a loss by KO and submission. So you may be able to question whether or not he has the sub defense to fend off an attack that Manuel Exposito might throw at him. Momentum check for these guys. So both guys on 3-fight win streaks. Exposito last fought on 11/8/2024. His previous opponents here, 14-10, 14-14, 7-3, 7-2. Now, although his opponents have a shit ton of fights, like I said, you have to look at that win rate overall. 14-10 is not a very positive rate. And then you have a guy who's at a 0 because it's a wash, 14-14. Delano, on the other hand, he last fought on 2/7/25. And then taking a look at his previous opponents, a 7-0 opponent, a 17-6 opponent, a 14-1 opponent, and a 9-0 opponent. So when we compare the two, Delano has a very solid resume here, given that his previous fights and those fighters have solid records. I mean, 17-6, 14-1, 9-0, 7-0. Like, these guys all have very solid win streaks going that he was able to go out there and get the win over. Taking a look at intangibles and X factors. So obviously no guy here is the home fighter. Tons of pressure for both of them. Red flag for me is Exposito's previous opposition. I just think that he has a lackluster resume in terms of the fact that although they have a ton of professional fights, they are not winning type fighters compared to what Delano brings to the page here, which is lots of very solid experience. But also another thing to add here on variables is Delano has a loss. His most recent loss was to an active UFC fighter, and that guy's last name is Santos. I think it's Gabriel Santos. He is in the UFC and had success too. He's 2-2 now in the UFC, that guy. And then also Delano has 5-round experience, guys. He has not only fought in several main events, but also won belts or fought for belts in LFA, where he's gone 5 rounds. So he definitely has a 5-round gas tank. Not as crazy of a thing that you would need for this fight, given it's a 3-rounder. But knowing that he has that 5-round experience just helps me further my position on the fact that Delano is likely to get a win here, guys. I think that just given the fact that he's faced opponents who have better winning records or are undefeated, and then also has more fights under his belt as well, I feel like all of that is going to play a big factor in him being able to get a win here. But I'm also not very sold on him maybe even getting a finish. Honestly, guys, after the first week of Contender Series, I'm thinking that a lot of these guys go to decision. I hope I'm wrong, though, because I would like to see more fighters get signed. But I'm thinking that Delano will probably win this one by decision and a 3 out of 5 confidence. that is my summary, guys, for Dana White's Contender Series Week 2. Make sure you guys comment below your thoughts and let me know who you guys are picking. Also, would love to hear if you guys want me to incorporate any additional or new details that I'm not incorporating currently. Would love to hear from that in the comments. And then also, if you guys can make sure you give this video a like if you enjoyed. It helps my channel quite a bit when you guys are engaging. So I would truly appreciate anything you can give me there. And then finally, if you aren't subscribed to Fight Feed, please subscribe to Fight Feed so you can stay on top of videos like this one, but also all of my other content that I post, breakdowns, picks and predictions for UFC cards, new matchmaking videos. I drop content almost every single day, so I hope you guys will subscribe. Thank you once again, and I will see you guys all in the next one.